This episode of The Matt Feret Show is brought to you by the Brickhouse Agency. Brickhouse is a boutique independent health insurance agency that focuses on finding the right Medicare coverage for folks across the country. Matt's wife, Nikki, is the heart behind Brickhouse. She's great at making confusing things clear and is passionate about helping people find a Medicare insurance policy that suits their individual needs. To schedule a free one-on-one appointment with Nikki or a member of her team, head on over to brickhouseagency.com or simply call 844-844-6565 and someone will help you schedule a phone call or a Zoom meeting. The consultation is free because the insurance companies pay Brickhouse, not you. There's never any pressure or obligation to enroll. Your clearer, simpler Medicare journey is just a call or click away. brickhouseagency.com. Not affiliated with or endorsed by the government or federal Medicare program. Contacting Brickhouse Agency, LLC will direct you to a licensed insurance agent.
Hello, everyone. This is Matt Feret, author of Prepare for Medicare and Prepare for Social Security Insiders Guidebooks and online course training series. Welcome to another episode of The Matt Feret Show, where I interview insiders and experts to help light a path to successful living in midlife, retirement, and beyond. Welcome to The Matt Feret Show, practical conversations to help you thrive in midlife, retirement, and beyond. I'm Matt Feret, author of books and courses on Medicare and Social Security, and a former healthcare executive with decades of insider experience. I use that experience to help people make clearer, smarter decisions about health, wealth, lifestyle, and caregiving. Each week, I sit down with experts, insiders, and fascinating people to explore what it really takes to thrive, finding purpose, building stronger relationships, and creating a sense of meaning and community in the second half of life. Together, we'll light the path towards your wealth, wisdom, and wellness. Welcome to the conversation. Today's conversation is about preparedness, but not in the way it's usually discussed. Most of us here have a plan and then think about ourselves. But in midlife and beyond, preparedness isn't individual anymore. It's multi-generational. It's about kids who live elsewhere, parents who may be aging, living alone, or even living in facilities. And of course, families spread across different cities, even states, who suddenly have to make decisions under pressure. My guest today is Patrick Hardy, known as Disaster Patrick, a professional disaster planner who helps families think through real-world disruptions before they turn into emergencies. This is not a fear-based conversation. It's about protecting independence, reducing stress, and making sure the people we care about aren't left scrambling when something goes wrong. Disaster Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Matt. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Okay, so when most people here have a plan, what do they think that means? And why is what they think usually not enough?
Well, frankly, I'm surprised. And I want to say I'm very proud of the listeners that you have, because if they have a plan, I congratulate them, because the vast majority of people don't have that at all. So what I tell people is that the most of the time when we're trying to create disaster preparedness, when we're trying to have true preparedness, people try to write out plans. And sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't update it. It gets old. We forget about it. We go and buy some old dusty red backpack that we got at Walmart or Home Depot. And you know about this, Matt. You know this as well as anybody. It will have a zip tie on there. It will have a zip tie on that backpack. And it's never been opened. It's never been opened. Yeah. So then, of course, no one knows what's in it. So then, of course, the disaster occurs. You get a hurricane or earthquake or lions and tigers and bears, oh my, whatever. And they open it up, and it's the first time they're seeing what's in here.
Yeah.
That's the first time. So what I tell people is I want to totally change the way you think about preparing yourself for disasters. I don't want you to worry about writing things down, I don't want you to write it. Instead, I want you to focus on your disaster preparedness by starting with an empty backpack. I want your backpack to be the center of your disaster preparedness. And you and I are clearly going to be talking about, caregiving and families and all that. And you will see that throughout our conversation today, I'm going to be bringing us back to that, because that backpack is going to be the center of our preparedness. And guess what? It doesn't require you to write anything down. You won't have to write anything down. But what you have to do is you have to make that backpack and say, listen, no matter what's going on around me, no matter how severe it is, in the end, that backpack gives me the tools that I need to be successful. And so when I see plans a lot of times and people will hand me plans they've written a while ago, I will always challenge them. I'll say, does this work? Does that work? And we'll pull equipment out. And so when I see backpacks that haven't been touched or haven't been opened because the zip tie is still on there, that tells me that something is missing here. And so my focus with disaster preparedness is saying, let's find a different way that individually empowers us. And for me, my belief is that can start with a backpack.
With a backpack. Let's go into what's in the backpack. I mean, let's just hit it. When you're sitting here talking, I'm thinking about Netflix movies I've seen or TV shows, and they call them go bags. In the spy movies. And then I think about, well, if a hurricane was coming, we know the roads are going to be jammed. What about my family pictures? What about my laptop? Like, okay, so then let's jump to it. What should be in this backpack, and should it be one of these things that hangs out in a room, or should I open it before I leave and stuff it full of other things? So I've got to, I'm sure you've heard this question a million times, but what goes into that thing and what doesn't, I guess.
Totally. And we'll go through each piece, because I think you're sort of asking me 2 or 3 questions here. So what we'll do is we'll kind of break it down a little bit in pieces, and I'll kind of lay it out for you. So I think that your first and your major question, and I think it's a very relevant one, is what goes in this thing? What goes in this backpack? If this backpack is so powerful, what needs to go in it? Well, there's a method I've been using since I've been working with clients. I started work when I became a consultant. I worked with high net worth clients. I worked with big corporations. And so I developed a method to very quickly be able to find exactly what they need, what goes into that backpack. And before I say what needs to go in it, before I talk to you about the method, before I talk to you about any of those things, I want everyone to change the way they're thinking about this. Okay. I want you to think about yourself as having that backpack. What does that backpack really do? What is the purpose of that backpack? Well, the purpose of the backpack, it's not to get you out of a hurricane zone. It's not supposed to do that. It's also to get you out of an earthquake zone. It's not supposed to do that. What it's supposed to do is it maximizes your options. Whatever is in that backpack and the things I'm going to talk to you about in a few minutes needs to maximize your options when an event is occurring around you. Earthquake, hurricane, tornado, wildfire, fill in the blanks. The backpack needs to maximize your options, because when people get themselves in trouble, it's not the size of the hurricane that matters. It's not the size of the earthquake that matters. What matters is how many options do you have? Because disasters come down to, what am I going to be able to do? So the way I started is this. I would say, in every disaster, no matter what, you have 3 options: evacuate, shelter in place, and lockdown. Those are your 3 options, no matter what it is. You can think of a disaster, whatever it is, it comes down to evacuation, shelter in place, and lockdown. Now, when we're talking about large events where you have to leave your area, you not only have to leave your home, you have to leave your community, you have to maybe even leave your state. And do you have an ability to do that? And my answer is does your backpack allow you to? Does your backpack give you the tools that you need? And I'll explain what those things are. But the major idea I want everyone here to have is that backpack gives you great options, and it can empower you tremendously. and it can maximize your opportunities. But if you don't use the backpack correctly, you don't fill it correctly, then what's going to happen is it limits your options. And that's when people start to get in trouble in disasters. And that's when things start to happen. So, okay. So what's really go in this thing? Well, I put it into 5 categories. I call it the 5-pocket method. And I say 5 pockets because, Matt, you and I have obviously, we've all owned jeans. Everyone who's listening to this has owned jeans at some point. You know, there's 4 pockets, right? And then there's always that little 5th pocket that's always there on the right-hand side.
You find a random dollar in there, or like a key that you misplaced because you used it thinking it was a good idea.
There you go. Exactly.
Yep.
And so what I say to people is I say, no matter where you are, work, home, school, car, vacation, Barbados, whatever, you should always, always, always have enough in your 5 pockets to get to your next location of refuge, whether it's an evacuation location, a sheltering in place location, or a locking down location. And once you go there, you should have enough to get to the next place. And you see how I do that? It maximizes your options. So you're not saying, gee, do I have to carry my whole backpack with me when I go on vacation? No, you don't have to do that any more than I have to do that when I go into a business meeting. But I have enough on me. I'll carry a sling, and it gets me enough to get to my car. My car gives me enough to go, and I have multiple locations. I have a storage unit with supplies. I have my home. I have different places I can go. And you see how I've maximized the options? Because if one road is blocked and I can't get home, hey, maybe I can get to my storage unit. Maybe I can get to my colleague's office. But if I don't have the tools in here to get me there, then it doesn't matter, right? So the 5 pockets. Well, the first pocket is physical. Okay, so first, and we know about that stuff, right? So what I tell people with physical is do you have the ability to breathe? Do you have the ability to see? And do you have the ability to move? That's one of the main things I talk about with the physical pocket. So things like goggles, masks, shoes. I know it sounds weird, but I work with people who work in these high-rise towers, Matt. Obviously you've seen them in New York and everything. And I had this guy, he worked on like the 50th floor. He was turning to me going, I wear, business shoes, dress shoes. And I said, I said, have you ever tried to go down the staircase? He goes, oh, I'm sure I can do it. I said, okay, so for lunch today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go down the stairs today, and you're going to do it in dress shoes. And literally, by about the 3rd or 4th floor, he was having difficulty because he was tripping and everything else because the stairs were designed in a way it wasn't right. So I said to him, listen, we got to get you the right shoes. You have to have the option to not take the elevator. You have to have elevator plus stairs. You see what I'm saying? And so
I do.
And so and with physical as well, obviously food, water, different things. Do you have to carry 50 cans of beans? No, you don't. But you do have to have other elements, things that will protect you physically, your pharmacy, things like that. So when I talk about the physical pocket, it's the stuff that's going to make you physically safe throughout the disaster. And it will change depending upon where you live, right? So you and I, before we came on today, you and I were talking about how you went and visited just north of Sacramento, a place called Placerville, which is a very rural area. Placerville gets a lot of wildfires. So when I talk to clients in Placerville, I say, listen, you got to wear masks. You have to have a mask in every single disaster backpack. So that's the physical one. The second one is psychological, and it's a fun pocket to talk about because nobody ever talks about it. I always say, listen, in the psychological pocket, I want you to have something in your disaster backpack that will get you focused in an instant.
Okay.
Will focus you, get you out of it. So I was actually addressing Matt. I was at a high school a few weeks ago as keynoting, and I was talking to the whole group, and I said, and they were asking me what should go in the backpack, just like you did, and I mentioned some stuff.
Yeah.
And I finally said, hey, you know what is something you should absolutely tell your parents that you have to have in your disaster backpack? You should tell them this and tell them they need to buy this right away if they don't already have it. And all the kids were like, what? And I said, a Nintendo Switch. And I said, well, what do you... And I was like, how many of you play video games? Hands up. And I always get a bunch of hands up. And I go, How many of you, if you were in an unknown location, you were in a hotel, you were in a shelter, you were in the car with your annoying parents, annoying brothers and sisters, and everything else, if you had a Nintendo Switch and had your earbuds in, the whole world would just disappear. And everybody was like, yeah. And I say, there you go. Because in a disaster, the psychological portion is so critical. It's so important. So the psychological
So,
element could be a lot of things for parents. I
yeah,
also
I was
talk.
gonna say,
Yeah,
what are some of those things for adults? Yeah, I mean, I would do a Nintendo Switch for about
sure.
10 minutes.
Yeah, well, and I can honestly say I hardly my brother and I are actually we still play games from time to time, but that kind of thing. But most people have grown up and grown past it. But things like a book, if a
Yeah.
book helps you, and not a new book you've never read before, a book you really like. Like for me, my favorite book of all time is Jurassic Park. And so I keep a copy of Jurassic Park in my disaster kit because I like reading about it. And so I enjoy it. It takes me out of the world. The other thing is it could be an object. It could be a photograph. And
Mm.
here's an idea. I say this all the time to folks. I say, here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about a smell that reminds you of home, something that reminds you of home. And then what I want you to do is find either a perfume or find, lotion or an incense stick, whatever. And by the way, I have put incense sticks before in disaster kits, believe it or not. And what I want you to do is I want you to put that in your kit because smell is the closest sense tied to memory. So regardless of where you are, if you're able to smell that a little bit as you're going to bed, so close your eyes and smell it, all of a sudden the world goes away and you can think about home, right? So depending upon what's going on, I tell people layer it. Find something that will relax you. When I used to be an EMT, I used to put a photograph in the visor of the ambulance. And so when I used to have a really difficult call, Matt, I used to flip it down and it was a picture of this tropical island. Beautiful
Ah.
blue ocean, beautiful day, little few clouds in the sky and all that palm trees. And I used to do that and it used to just take me away from the moment just for 30 seconds or so. And then I
And
could,
allows you to focus and come back into reality, right? So
you
basically,
got
what you're trying to say is,
it.
you have to have something there that keeps you from freaking out,
It does.
because what you want are a highly stressful situation, and having something that grounds you is the psychological moment.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. And it makes a big difference. That's why I always say, when you buy disaster food, please get disaster food that you actually like. Because if you're eating food you don't like, there's nothing worse than that. Nothing worse than that. So then the third element is the personal side. And so when it comes to personal side, I talk about things like keys, glasses, lots of different stuff, batteries, flashlights, the MacGyver, pocket knife, duct tape, stuff like that. So, because those are things that people need interpersonally. So, one of the things I'll just kind of say this. One of the reasons why I tell people you don't need to write down where you're evacuating to. You don't need to write that down. Just have a map and circle it. And by the way, have a key to get in. That tells me you've talked to the person who owns that house or whatever, and you've gotten a key from them. There it is in the backpack. We didn't have to write anything down. There it is. Or if we have another car, do I want those car keys in your backpack? Yeah, absolutely. And that tells me, do you have to figure it out? Gee, I'm going to drive with this car. You don't have to do that. It's all in there. You know what I mean? So, and you have a map, so you know exactly where you're going. So that's the personal side. The last two are pretty easy. The fourth pocket is papers. So
Mm.
things like identification. Every person should have an ID. So if you have an old driver's license that is expired or an old passport, I've got a few of those, then put your old passport, throw it in that disaster backpack because a passport will get you anywhere. Really will. It'll get you anywhere, even if it's expired. Doesn't matter, right? And the other thing in papers too is I tell people, please carry cash. Carry some amount of cash on you. You should always have some amount of money on you. And then other minor things you can have, insurance cards or things like that you want to have in there. And then the last one is your phone. The fifth pocket is your phone, and you don't have to have an extra phone, although I do have an old phone that could work theoretically. But chargers. I always say you have a different kind of chargers: a car charger, a wall charger, a solar charger. And things like radios, ways of communicating. Because when I talk about phone, I don't just mean your phone. I mean, how do you communicate? Having an emergency radio. So a lot of different ways to be able to communicate. So you're not limited. Again, Matt, all about options, 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 options. Because in disasters, you've been enough of them. I've been enough of them to know it's always the first thing where you're like, I'll be able to do this. And then, oh, that's not available anymore. That's when we start to get in trouble. So that's the 5-pocket method for ensuring you have the options that you need to respond to whatever you're dealing with.
Thank you for that. And what I didn't hear in what you said was you need a handgun or a knife or, 5 days worth of freeze dried food. Nothing. I was thinking back to, you find an old first aid kit you throw in the back of the SUV, and 10 years later, half of it's already expired. You can't use anyway. I didn't hear specifics in there. Is that because you don't need it, or are those different levels for different types of situations?
Well, it really depends, right? So if you live in a rural area, it may be that you are going to be carrying things that are different than if you live in downtown Manhattan.
Okay.
Right. So I'll give you this example. I actually work with a very large apartment complex. I've been working with them for almost 15 years now. And we literally, for a lot of the residents who are on the top who are non-ambulatory, so these are people who, they're not walking down the stairs. Like, that's not going to happen. We actually gave them a sled. It's an inflatable sled. So they'll take it, and we designed it, and they actually just pull it out. And it's actually an inflatable sled that can sit in it, and they can slide down the stairs, or they can have some of the other people who are in the stairwell help slide them down, right? Is that something you're going to need if you live in a rural area on a farm? Probably not, right? But that's why I tell people I want you to customize it from scratch. I said you need to start with an empty backpack, and I meant it. You should start with an empty backpack because you need to build it according to your needs. Is it possible that you're going to need a pocket knife? I think everyone should have one in there. Yes, absolutely. What kind? It will depend on what you're dealing with. And in fact, I have a series of videos starting today, and it's actually for the next 30 days on my YouTube channel. It's all free, and now you're not paying for it. And what it is I walk everyone who watches those videos from an empty backpack to a full backpack completely. I go step by step. Think about this, think about that, think about these things. And it'll help you to kind of see what do you have to have, so that by the end of the 30th day, you now have a full backpack. You knew exactly what to buy, what was specifically for you. And in fact, on the weekends, I give people little drills and things to try. Do it in the dark. Figure out this. One of the things I didn't talk about, which I really should have, and it's something that has to go in every single one, is flashlights. You should always have 3 different kinds of flashlights. You should have a wearable flashlight, so you kind of see where you're going. You should have a hand flashlight, which everyone talks about. And then you should have what's called a room light. So you actually have like a lantern, and you can actually draw them open, and they light the room around you. You need those 3 lights. And that helps you and depending upon where you work, where you live, you're going to need bigger flashlights or smaller flashlights, right? And it'll help you. But to customize that for backpacks, it really depends on what you are dealing with.
So, and this is fascinating, by the way. So I'm sitting here, you're creating a picture in my brain and where I spend time, where I live, the certain situations around it, right? Metro, suburban, rural, where my in-laws live, etc. You mentioned work though. So do you have to have 2, or do you bring one on the train or in your car every day? Do you leave it in your car? Like, with some practical, do I just make 1, or do I make 2 or 3 depending upon where I am? How am I supposed to think about that?
You should have a backpack that you leave at home. You should have a backpack in your car, and you should have a backpack, quote unquote, on your person at all times. And now, we're not going to carry a backpack everywhere we go, right? Well, I mean that in a metaphorical sense. You should, if you remember what I was talking about earlier, you should have enough on you to get to the next location. So Does your backpack in your car need to look like the one at home? No, not necessarily. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. The one in your car should be enough to get you back home or get you to another evacuation location, right? So if you say to me, hey, Patrick, listen, I have a backpack at home, fabulous. Should I have one at my grandmother's house where I'm planning to evacuate to? It depends, because if you can't get home, will you need to get to your grandmother's house? Perhaps, yes, because that's an evacuation location. So should you have another one there? Yeah. Because you shouldn't assume that she's going to have everything you need for you. I mean, she's not going to carry your pharmacy. She's not going to carry all that. But what I mean is that do they all have to be huge? They do not. In fact, as I said, I carry a sling with me everywhere I go. And in that sling, I have a few disaster supplies to get me to my car. And I also have another place that if I can't get there, that I can actually go to, where I can always say, all right, if I have to use these supplies, I can. I'm not reliant on anyone else to make sure that I can see, that I can breathe, and that I can move. That I have flashlight. I have a flashlight in there, actually a wearable flashlight. And they're really small too. You can fit them in there really easily. And then in my home, do I have a full disaster backpack? Yes. Unequivocally, yes, I do. Do I have a small one in my car? Sure. But Matt, the whole point is that I'm trying to get everyone to think about it like this. Think about it like a series of nodes or a series of relay points. Okay. So that you can always jump from one to the next. And that's what I want you to think about, is that it's not a linear sense of, okay, home, or work, car, home. It could be work, car, someone's house, back home, whatever. So that you have enough so that you're never stuck. Because once you run out of options, that's when people start to experience disasters. That's when it occurs. Because then they don't have anything to do. No response.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Let me ask this question next. At what point does being ready and prepared as an individual stop being all about oneself and personal and start being about other people?
The minute you fill your own backpack. Because once you have prepared yourself, now you can help others. You and I have probably been on hundreds of flights, maybe thousands of flights. And that safety briefing they always give at the beginning of as soon as we sit in our seats, and then they do all the little bells are dinging and tell everybody, please sit, get your stuff in the overhead bins, all that.
Yep.
Then they start talking about the oxygen masks. And they always say what? Put your mask
Put it on yourself first. Yeah.
Right.
And then help the next person next to you.
Right. Exactly. And people hate that stuff. They don't listen half the time. I do, because I'm a disaster professional and I love this stuff. But I know a lot of people don't listen to that stuff. But there's a reason why we say that, because you have to protect yourself first before you can help others. I have this conversation with EMTs. I go back to my old EMT school because I train now. I train them and I train the medics on disasters and on weapons of mass destruction and hazardous materials and things. And when I talk about hazmat, I always turn to EMTs and I always say, when you roll up on scene, yeah, and you see those patients over there, oh yeah, so what's the first thing that you should do? And they always go, I'm going to open the door and I'm going to make sure I glove up. And I let them walk through it. I go, and then I'm going to grab my gurney and then I'm going to grab my stuff and I'm going to grab my kit, and I'm going to head over there. And I go, you forgot about the fact that you don't know why that person's on the ground. What if there's a chemical outside? What if you're seeing barrels outside? Should you step outside at all? And they go, no. And sometimes all EMTs say, well, we just have to be heroes. We got to go into it and risk ourselves. And I go, the problem is if you do that, you become a victim too.
Right.
Now we have to take care of them and you and your partner. Right. So what I say to folks is protect yourself first. And the best way that you can prepare everyone else around you is to start by preparing yourself. Get your backpack established first. And I think the second part to your question is a great one. And I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit more. But one of the things that I do and I say to people is I say, once you have taken care of your own backpack, if you have people you are taking care of who clearly can't do it themselves. So it's a baby, or it's, someone who you're taking care of, they have dementia, or they have some debilitating illness, or a pet, right? Your cat or your dog, they can't do their own preparedness. So what happens is now you create a backpack for them. It's their disaster backpack. It's not yours. It's theirs. You have yours and they have theirs. Because what I want people to understand is that they have to have their own individual preparedness on their own. It's separate from you. By separating them, it may seem like it's the worst thing that you can do, but to answer your question, it is the best thing that you can do for them. And it's the first thing you should do. Because as soon as you separate it, now you say, oh, geez, they're not going to be able to use my backpack. Makes sense. So I have to use the 5-pocket method on them too, because their needs are going to be different. Things they need physically, things they need psychologically, things they need personally. Their papers are different than mine. Their phones are different than mine. Their ways of communicating are different, you see? And so once you've done that, now you've given them options without them even realizing it. You've given them options in disasters because you're helping them and you're facilitating them, right? But you have to provide that on their own so that they have their own disaster kits. And the philosophy I tell everyone, for those of you who are hearing this, here's an easy way to think about it. This philosophy, I want you to bring into it every single time you are preparing a disaster backpack for yourself or someone else. If I do nothing, no one else will either. That's what I want you to think to yourself. If I do nothing, no one else will either. So what I want, that changes your mindset. Instead of saying, if I do nothing, that's okay, the nursing home will handle it. If I do nothing, that's okay, the nice people at FEMA will handle it. If I do nothing, the fill in the blank will handle it. That's when people get in trouble because they try to sort of pass the accountability onto someone else. And I say, don't do that. And the best way to start that is it's your backpack. FEMA's not going to fill that backpack for you. The Red Cross isn't going to do that for you. These organizations have other things to worry about. So you have to be accountable for yourself. And then when you're working with someone else, say the same thing for them. If I don't do anything for them, no one else is going to do anything for them either. Now you are forcing your mindset to say, how do we prepare them? And it starts with that empty backpack.
Thank you. So the empty backpack, and let's talk about what you were going down the road for. So people in midlife and even beyond, even younger, right? I think the parent, no parent. I mean, as soon as you're a parent, right, you stop being the most important person to yourself. The kids come first. I don't care how old you are, but you still have to take care of yourself first. And like you said, provide that example. So if you have kids, young or grown, how should parents think differently when their kids live somewhere else, college, another state, even another country? Still do it for them? Or how do you think about that? Not just in terms of the backpack, but let's go to the backpack first. How should we think about that when families are dispersed? And if I'm a parent, I am. What do I do for my kids, or what do I instruct my kids to do?
I have a video coming out in about 3 weeks. I built an entire wildfire shelter. And it was actually weirdly enough, it was actually in Placer County. We actually did this,
That's
where
funny.
they get a lot of wildfires out there. Where myself and a 7-year-old, we built a wildfire shelter in his backyard using only school supplies. That was it. Only school supplies. So, and what it had to do
What do you
was,
do? Do you melt crayons? Does it start that way? No.
I wish that's actually would have been interesting. But one of the things that we did was we took like yardsticks. Okay. So we built the frame with yardsticks, and then we used tape, and you'll see the kind of tape we used. We didn't use Gorilla Tape for anyone who's thinking, well, he MacGyvered it. We didn't. We used masking tape, which is what you find in classrooms. We did all this stuff. I created the sloped roof, and then we set it on fire. And actually, it didn't burn at all. And then we did a smoke test. I actually took an AQI indicator. An AQI indicator, for those of you who don't know, it's basically an air quality indicator. That's what it is. It essentially looks at the ambient air and says, is this air breathable? So what we did was we lit a massive bonfire next to the structure, and it was covered in smoke. And I put the little boy inside. His name was Liam. He was in there. and I gave him the AQI indicator, and lo and behold, we were able to get the door sealed, and the AQI in that structure was just as good as you would have gotten anywhere else. So we literally created a full shelter, again, entirely out of school supplies. We used foil that they used with art class, all that other stuff. Why am I saying this? Because one of the things that I want to disabuse all the parents of, including you, Matt, everybody, I want you to think about your kids instead of being dependents. I want them for you to see them during a disaster as a team member. They are a team member. They are a team. You are a team with them. And so what I want you to stop putting people in, what I want you to stop sort of thinking of your kids as it's okay. Don't do planning. I'll do it for you. No big deal. Whatever. And so the backpack comes into play. Is that the obvious result? Is that kind of the road I'm leading you down to? Yes, of course it is. That's where I want you to lead them down to. But the way to get them there is you have to say, look, we can do this. And it doesn't have to be awful. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be terrible. And that's the reason why I did that video with him. And in fact, we're doing a series of other videos with him. I'm going to camp with him, and I'm going to show him, hey, listen, you're going to do your preparedness, and I don't care what what the students are doing. I don't care what the teachers are doing. I don't care what the camp counselors are doing, because you can't rely on them to handle your disaster response. You are responsible. And so can I get a 7-year-old to be a really good responder? Yes, I can, actually. I've done it many times. I ran this experiment. It's about 4 years ago. I worked for this charter school that had hired me randomly. And so I said, okay. And it was a big school. So what I did was I went to a classroom. And the teacher was in there, and I said to them, okay, guys, and I talked to them about general preparedness and stuff. And I said, okay, let's find the red backpack. No one knew where it was. And the teacher said, well, wait. If there's a disaster, I will grab the red backpack. And I said, well, what happens if something happens to you? And she goes,
Right.
oh, that's never going to happen, but I don't want the kids to handle it. They don't know what to do. And I said, let's run an experiment. So what I did was I had the teacher go out of the room, and I said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. You're the captain, and I just picked random kids. You're the captain, you're the vice captain. And I told the kids, you cannot leave this room in any disaster without that red backpack and without that roll sheet. Because there's always, as you guys know, for those of you guys with kids, there's actually roll sheets that sit on the walls now because of the security threats schools deal with now.
Oh, no,
So there's
I
always a
didn't know
roll
that.
sheet, easy to grab, in case law enforcement has to come in. Okay. So I said, you're going to grab the roll sheet and the backpack. Okay. You kids are responsible for that, not Mrs. So-and-so, you. So then we ran the fire drill, and I told the teacher, you can't be in the room during the fire drill. And so she said, okay. So she stood outside, they ran the fire drill, and lo and behold, without me telling them, the kids grabbed the backpack and the roll sheet. Fast forward 4 months later, I did it at all the classrooms. So fast forward 4 months later, I got a phone call from that charter school saying that lo and behold, they actually had a fire at the school. And in one of the classrooms, there was a substitute teacher. So a guest teacher was there, not the real one. And the guest teacher ran out of the room trying to get the kids to run out. And so they walked all the way out to the field, which is where the evacuation place was. And the substitute teacher realized she'd forgotten the roll sheets. And the kids handed her the roll sheet and handed her the red backpack.
Yeah.
Because they had been trained. They were told, you're not going to have to be a follower. You can lead. So I would look at every single child. I look at them right in the eye, and I'd say, you can do this, and I can show you how. Because then you will find, Matt, that instead of them being the dependents, they can't handle it on their own, age-appropriate responsibilities, you would be amazed at what the kids can do. Again, you're not expecting them to do every single thing. They're not going to drive you to an evacuation location, but there are things that they can do that basically, regardless of their age, the message has to be, you are an equal team member in this, and I'm relying on you as much as you are relying on me.
When you've got multiple family members, let's say kids, right? And let's go ages, I don't know, 15 to 40, right? So mobile
Adults
and
some are underage. Okay, got it. So
yeah,
some
yeah,
are teenagers and some are adults. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got
So, but they're mobile, right? They can either drive a car or get on a bus, get on a train, walk, whatever, right? We're not
it.
talking people who are infants. We're not talking people who are in nursing homes potentially or have mobility issues.
Fair.
And so, I as a a family member, or my wife as a family member, we've got kids and or cousins or whatever, and I can remember these commercials. I don't know if they still air, but you will know because you pay attention more than the average person. Those commercials for like, I think it was from FEMA, and like be on a TV show and it'd be like, have a plan.
Yeah.
And oh,
Here's some
thanks,
slight
appreciate that. And so like, do I
stuff.
go to my in-laws house? Like, what do you mean have a plan for what? A flood, locusts, rivers of blood? Like, what specifically am I supposed to do? Either which way, do you think are you supposed to, let's say there's a mass casualty event or a massive hurricane, right? To go back to Katrina, there's a just new documentary that just came out about it. When you have to move someplace, should you tell your family members, we are going to meet at Nana's house, or we're going to meet at my friend Joe's house in Alabama that's got 500 guns and a storm shelter? Should you be that specific in those instances, or do you not need to be that specific?
You don't have to be. I can look at your backpack, and without asking you a single question, if you follow the method that I've laid out for you, you don't have to tell me a single thing. I could tell you in your backpack where your primary evacuation location is going to be and where the secondary location is going to be. I should be able to say the city, the location, how to get there. I should have the key. I should have everything, the security code to the house, all that stuff. Because you don't have to write it down. It should be in there. And the way that I do it, it's like an engineering control, because you wouldn't have the key to their house unless you asked them, hey, listen, I'm going to evacuate here. Can I have a spare key in case you're gone and I need to be able to get into your house? That happens a lot. People will evacuate and they'll show up at someone's house and they're not home. Right.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what I say to them is, do you need to communicate that in advance, but just not in the way that FEMA suggests? I've seen those PSAs many times, obviously, but one of the things I see them many times. I'm watching a 49er game or something. I'm a big 49er fan. And so I watch a 49er game and they always talk about earthquakes. They're always saying, we need to have a plan for this. And I just go, nobody's going to do that. I'm realistic. No one's going to do that. I've been doing this for 20 years. And so what I say instead is look, if you have adult children, okay, so you're here and you have adult children who live in, and I'm going to use the word adult colloquially. So let's say they're college age. Okay, they're 20, 21, sure. And they're going to, say, Boston College. Okay, so you're in Sacramento and they're at Boston College. Okay, so when they're there, there's a disaster in Boston. Okay, do I need to try to call the kids? I would want to, but I would realize that it's better for them to try to reach me. Maybe I'll text them anyway. I'm going to try. I mean, this isn't just like I'm just going to be like, well, crossing my fingers. I'm going to text them. But in advance, those kids should know where they're going to go, what's going to be the primary and alternate locations where they're going to evacuate to. Maybe they have a relative out there. That does happen a lot, where people will say, listen, I live in Boston. I've got a family member who lives, 30, 40 miles away. And they have to know how to get there. Do you have to take a train? Can they take a car? Can they take all the stuff? So that's why the backpacks have to be very individualized, because we can't come up with every possible scenario, right? There could be a lot.
Right.
But what I am saying is that when you're planning for them to go to college in Boston, when you're planning that, you need to give them the autonomy to find it out for themselves where they're going to go, and then communicate it to you somehow. Either you're going to work on it together. I mean, if you're going to say, listen, I'm going to go to Aunt Jane's house. Okay. So they know in advance. We need to call Aunt Jane and say, listen, my son is going to Boston College. And so, I need to get a key. Okay. That's fine. Right. You see how that communication was instantaneous and easy? We instead of having a conversation, what should we do in a hurricane? Oh man. Nobody wants to have that conversation. I'm a disaster professional. I don't want to have that conversation. But instead, if I say, listen, he's at Boston College. He's alone. If something happens over there, can he come by your house? Of course. Can we have a separate key made? Sure. Of course. Ta-da. Done. Now I don't have to call Aunt Jane if there's a disaster, because you know as well as I do what happens in disasters. Phones become not available, and Aunt Jane knows that he's at Boston College, and if he has to evacuate the dorms, there's a possibility he's going to come here, right? So those are options. Again, it's the options available. Does he have the option to go to Aunt Jane's house? Well, he does. Can he go to a hotel? I don't know. Did I give him enough money? Maybe. What I mean is you say, so I have to lay all these things out in advance, but I do it through physical objects versus just saying, let's write it all down. It's not going to happen. And it's faster than
Makes
having
sense.
conversations, the contrived ones that kind of FEMA creates that are kind of irritating because that never happens in real life.
Yeah. Have a plan. Yeah. The PSAs have a plan. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
That sounds like a great idea, but thanks, I guess.
I've been a disaster professional for 20 years, and I've never written a disaster plan out myself. And I'm happy to say that. And it's going to seem sacrilege to a lot of the emergency managers I work with because they're all big on get a plan, all that. I go, I have a plan. It's in my backpack. And I've developed it. I have my options. I go to my storage unit. I go here. I go to a colleague's house. I mean, there's things that I can do. Same with people who own horses and stuff. I always say, if something goes on in your barn and you have to evacuate your horses, what do you do with them? And a lot of times they go, well, I don't know what to do. And I go, we have option this, option this, option this, option this, but it's not instantaneous. We have to have a conversation with them and get the keys to the stable. We have to get this. We have to make, you see what I'm saying? And then I have a backpack for the horse.
Yep.
So literally, I'll create a disaster backpack that's just for the horse. Not for me, not for anyone else, not for the other horses. Just that one horse.
Turning thought into action, not just thought and writing it down.
Because I mean, writing it down isn't enough. I mean, you know that it's better than anybody, I'm sure. You got to actually have things, right?
Yep.
The right stuff.
Execute plans. Don't just plan. It's the execution.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move the other piece. Let's not pretend this is real, right? You've got a lot of our listeners are people with aging parents, not necessarily living anywhere close to them either. So how does getting prepared or helping them or doing it for them change when you might need to help somebody else quickly and that somebody else might not live near you? How does age, how does mobility, how does location, how does that change the approach here, or does it?
Well, it does and it doesn't, because if they are co-located with you, so you're taking care of a grandparent, you're taking care of a parent, you're taking care of a child who's in a horrible car accident and now can't do anything for themselves. I have clients who have that. And so what happens is I say, you prepare yourself first, and then you prepare them using the 5-pocket method. So you go through it with them. What do we need for this? Because they're going to have unique needs, things that aren't going to apply to you or me, right? So now, if there's someone who are located, like I have this question. Well, what happens if, I have a parent in a nursing home? Okay, so one of the things to say is this. First of all, the principles I told you don't change. Should you create a backpack for grandma? Yeah. Even if she's in a beautiful nursing home? Yeah. Even if it's a beautiful nursing home that you're paying a ton of money for? Yeah, absolutely. Because I have written disaster plans for 4,732 nursing homes. That's how many I've done. And I will tell you, myself and my staff, and I will tell you that I've gone to these folks, and what happens is people put them in the nursing homes. Either it's skilled nursing or assisted living or it's independent living, whatever. And they never ask the facility for the disaster plan. Every senior care facility in the United States, according to the Centers for Medicare and Medi-Cal Services, sorry about that, all the things jumble in my mind. And they require disaster plans, all 50 states. So when you check in a family member into one of the nursing homes, do you need to have a copy of their disaster plan? Yes. Absolutely every single instance. And why is that? What that disaster plan will tell you is, and they have to have written plans, that's just the law. So I'm not just saying, should they have a backpack? Well, they can't. There's laws that say they have to have written plans out. What the plans will say is A, where are these people going? And good disaster plans will say, they're going to go here. If they're at a room here, we're going to take them over here or over here or over here. Now you don't have to make phone calls during the disaster, frantically calling the nursing home from another state saying, where's my mom going? Where's she going?
Yeah.
I don't know. And literally,
you talk about stress and mindset. I mean, that will blow your stress out of the water, and your mindset, doesn't matter what book you have in your own backpack, that's going to blow your stress and mindset out of the water. Blow your
stress, and there's going to be instances where this really has happened. During Hurricane Matthew, which occurred in the Carolinas, there were entire nursing homes that basically were surrounded by water because the water table was so high. And so what happened was people were trying to call, and there was no phones. And so people were frantic saying, where's my grandma going? And I'm thinking to myself, the nursing home administrator doesn't have time to answer your questions. I know you want them to. I know you want that so badly, but they can't do that. Again, you're falling back on, if I do nothing, someone else will handle it for me. Okay, well, you shouldn't do that. If I do nothing, no one else will either. So I need to know what's in that disaster plan in advance. I need to know now. And does she need to have a disaster backpack? Yes. I will tell you this, and I mean it. I've done more disaster plans for nursing homes probably anybody in the world. I will say this to you. The nursing home staff will kiss your feet if you create a disaster backpack for your family member, whether you live 5 minutes away or 500 miles away or 5,000 miles away, that they will love you for it. Why? Because it gives them something that when they go to the new facility, they have the things that they need right away, so that the facility knows, okay, great, she has this, she has these things that are important to her. Because people who are in an altered psychological state, because like I've worked with facilities that have a memory care unit, I mean, those places are like Fort Knox. I mean, they're locked up, nobody's getting in and out of there. And when they evacuate these folks, they are combative to staff, they're combative to EMS professionals, they're combative to staff of other facilities. And to have a backpack with an object in it that will calm them down, oh my gosh, that is better than the Holy Grail. It really is, because then it relaxes them and gets them into a place where they're not in a position of injuring themselves or injuring staff, right? And they're comfortable, which is what we want. That's how you empower them. That's how you empower the kid at Boston College. That's how you empower the kid who's in private school in Switzerland. I'm just making this up. You know what I'm saying? But whatever.
Yeah, sure.
You empowering them, whether you're 5 minutes away or 500 miles away. The point is that you have to empower them or empower the people around them, because you're clearly not going to drive 500 miles to go into a hurricane zone, to pick up grandma. It'd be nice if we could do that, but that's unrealistic. But even if you did, you should still have the backpack there, because then that gives you something, because you're not going to carry everything that she needs. So that's what I tell people all the time. When you do that, entrust them, empower them, and give them a backpack with things that matter to them.
We just talked about mindset a little bit, and we talked about it earlier in the show as well. So what separates families, not just people, but families who respond calmly from those that panic when something unexpected happens?
Well, I'm going to correct you just a bit, Matt. What I tell people all the time is I don't want you calm in a disaster. I don't want you to be calm. You're not going to be calm. I was in one of the worst earthquakes. I was in the Northridge quake. My father was actually a business continuity professional at Cal State Northridge, of all places. And when we had the Northridge quake, I've been in a lot of disasters. I've been in tornadoes. I've been in hurricanes. I've been near at a place where there was a terrorist incident. I've seen a lot of scary things. The Northridge quake is the scariest thing I've ever been through, because the entire world is shaking. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. It's just shaking around you. Things are falling down around you. It's very disorienting. And so what separates families who really know what they're going to be doing from those who don't are the people who say, I assume that we're going to be alone here. I assume that at the outset. Because the families who say, I'm not worrying about it, I know that people will come and help us, those are the ones who, when those things are not available, all of a sudden it gets really bad for them. I want to kind of challenge you on this here. One thing is that I want to change your definition of a disaster. Okay, because I keynote a lot, so I speak to a lot of audiences all over the world. So I was speaking in front of an audience recently, and I said, okay, everybody, here's what I want to simulate for you. Let's pretend I want you to tell me if this is a disaster or not. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and I want you to tell me if you think this is a disaster or not. And they say, okay, fine.
Okay.
9.0 earthquake in the Bay Area.
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, and everybody hand raises, right? Everybody goes,
right.
Oh, yeah,
sure,
absolutely. What if it's 20,000 BCE? So it's 20,000 years before the birth of Christ.
Right.
And nobody lives there. Is that still a disaster? And everybody has to think about it. And I go, that when it becomes a disaster is when natural events or when some disruptive event, an earthquake, a fire, a volcanic eruption, intersects with human management systems. To make it really simple, this is how I want people to redefine disasters. A disaster only occurs to you when an event like an earthquake or a hurricane or whatever makes you weaker afterwards. If you are weaker, if you are stronger after that disaster, guess what? You didn't have a disaster at all. You took the disaster as an opportunity to be stronger, more resilient, all those things. So that's why I challenge people on disasters. I say a 9.0 earthquake is not a disaster. Even if it's filled with people, even if it's modern day San Francisco, a 9.0 earthquake is not a disaster unless you say it is. Because if you're prepared enough, if you've gotten options, now you're positioning yourself where you have recovered after the disaster has occurred, and now you can put yourself in a place where you can strengthen your family, you can strengthen your business, because you positioned yourself in a way where you're not going to allow the disaster to make things worse. That doesn't mean there's not going to be destruction. Of course there's going to be. Of course there's going to be damage to homes. Of course. And things are going to happen. And what I say to people is I say, we're going to grieve. We're going to be sad about that. Absolutely. Because there's no doubt. But then after that's done, I say, now, how am I going to make you stronger afterwards? What am I going to do for that? One of the stories I tell is actually about the 1906 earthquake, about an entrepreneur. He was a banker. He ran the Bank of Italy. And the bank was reduced to rubble. And he pulled the safe out from the bank, and he set up a table and chair, and he had a ledger book. This is 1906, right? So he lays the ledger book down and a pen, and anybody who came up to him and asked him for a loan, he signed for it and he handed them cash out of that safe. And he did that all day long. And of the money he loaned to people, 98% of that money was returned later on. Every single person paid the loan back. 98% paid the loans back entirely. And not only was he able to support the community and do that, but actually he took it as an opportunity because the bank was reduced to rubble. He actually renamed the bank, and he decided to call it Bank of America. And that bank became what it is today, right? He took the disaster and he said, it's just horrible. Things were destroyed. But how, now that I've helped the community by giving the money back, how can I put myself in a position to make myself, my family, my business stronger? And that's what I tell people all the time. These are opportunities for you to become stronger if you let it. Because I'm sure you talk about obstacles all the time. When you deal with middle age, you deal with a lot of things, and you sort of think, is this going to make me stronger or weaker? And in disasters, I tell people, it's no different in a disaster. You can be stronger afterwards if you position yourself correctly, and therefore you don't experience the disaster at all.
Last question. For somebody listening or watching who realizes they've been avoiding these conversations, it's almost like nobody really wants to think about death. We all know it's there, but we don't really want to plan for it necessarily, right? Because then that somehow makes it real. So anybody who's been avoiding these conversations or these steps, what's the smartest first step that won't feel overwhelming?
I want you to go to YouTube. I want you to type in the words Disaster Patrick. And then I want you to go to a playlist that says 30-day challenge. And in that playlist will be 30 videos for you. Each video will take you step by step at your own pace. I mean, do it your own pace. But I just put 30 days. I just say, hey guys, tomorrow do this, tomorrow do this, tomorrow do this. And you should do it in that way. And go in there and watch the videos and just think through what I say for you to purchase and buy and do all that. And by the way, the stuff I say to purchase and buy, it isn't like I say, hey, go to the Disaster Patrick store and buy it, because I don't say that. I just say, purchase this and purchase that. Because what I want people to do is to start with that empty backpack and build it up on their own. And they'll see the way that I talk is just like the way I'm talking to you today. You know what I mean? It's empowering. I tell people to do that. That's the easiest way. You don't have to have a conversation with anyone. Don't start that way. Don't feel that way. Watch the videos and watch how I empower you. Watch how I put you in a position where you can do this on your own, starting with just that simple backpack and building yourself up. Because the challenges that I'm doing this year, Matt, one of the challenges I'm actually doing this year, I do one big challenge a year. This year, believe it or not, I'm building a FEMA rated hurricane shelter made entirely out of Lego blocks. And I'm going to take 9 months and do it. I've partnered with the University of Maryland, and we're going to take it, and it's a life-size hurricane structure. It's partially built already. I'm going to take it to the University of Maryland, and they have a famous wind tunnel. It goes up to 200 miles per hour, and that will be live on YouTube. Now, am I doing that because we're going to should we all build hurricane-rated Lego shelters? Maybe we really want to. You don't have to, but you can. But the point is you can do it. And it doesn't require a lot of difficulty. That's the whole point. And that's the same with the 30-day challenge. I tell people, you don't have to have all these government agencies doing all this or, having these weird PSA conversations. Instead, it's the backpack. Easy. You don't have to say anything to anybody and just slowly build your backpack up. And by the 30th day, there you go. You have a disaster kit, because that's the whole point. All the videos I put up is all about preparing people. I evacuated 240 cats in 90 minutes. I did that. That's actually a video that's up on there because I showed people this can be done, and let me show you how. And we didn't have any senior staff there. It was just regular folks. So these are things that, again, I want people to understand that it can be done, and it doesn't have to be hard or complicated, and it certainly doesn't have to be doom and gloom.
Patrick, super interesting topic. Wonderful conversation. Thanks so much for being on.
Matt, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Everybody, that was Disaster Patrick, reframing being prepared as something much bigger than just emergencies. At its core, it's about protecting independence, dignity, and family stability, especially when the people we care about live in different places or depend on us in ways we don't always think about. If this episode gave you a new way to think about your role as a parent, adult child, or caregiver, share it with somebody in your family, because preparation works best when it's shared. You can learn more about Disaster Patrick at disasterpatrick.com, where the focus is practical preparation without panic. And as always, here's to your wealth, wisdom, and wellness. I'm Matt Feret. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me on the Matt Feret Show. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with a friend and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. If you're on Apple or Spotify, a quick rating or review really helps more people discover the show. For more resources, visit themattferretshow.com and sign up for the Matt Feret newsletter. And if you or someone you care for needs Medicare guidance, book a no-obligation consultation at brickhouseagency.com. Helping people make smarter choices as they age is my passion. This show is here to light the path towards your wealth, wisdom, and wellness. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The Matt Feret Show, related content, publications, and MF Media LLC is in no way associated, endorsed, or authorized by any governmental agency, including the Social Security Administration, the Department of Health and Human Services, or the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The Matt Feret Show is in no way associated with, authorized, approved, endorsed, nor in any way affiliated with any company, trademark names, or other marks mentioned or referenced in or on The Matt Feret Show. Any such mention is for purpose of reference only. Any advice, generalized statistics, or opinions expressed are strictly those of the host and guests of The Matt Feret Show. Although every effort has been made to ensure the contents of The Matt Feret Show and related content are correct and complete, laws and regulations change quickly and often. The ideas and opinions expressed on The Matt Feret Show aren't meant to replace the sage advice of healthcare, insurance, financial planning, accounting, or legal professionals. You are responsible for your financial decisions. It is your sole responsibility to independently evaluate the accuracy, correctness, or completeness of the content, services, and products of, and associated with, The Matt Feret Show, MF Media LLC, and any related content or publications. The thoughts and opinions expressed on The Matt Feret Show are those of the host and The Matt Feret Show guests only, and are not the thoughts and opinions of any current or former employer of the host or guests of The Matt Feret Show, nor is The Matt Feret Show made by, on behalf of, or endorsed or approved by any current or former employer of the host or guests of The Matt Feret Show.